Epic Dragons, today we are going to be talking about Caraval. So first off, I'm going to say this book was amazingly well written. I have not read anything that I can remember from Stephanie Garber, but I love this writing style. It took me about a day to actually burn through most of the book, so I was sucked into the storyline pretty quickly just because it was that fascinating, it was that riveting. It kept you on the edge of your seat after a certain point just because of the mystery that came with the book and the whole idea of this Caraval that I'll talk about a little bit later. So, first off, I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads just because, again, I have not been this entranced with a book since I think I first read Harry Potter. So I was moving, I was burning, I was flipping pages, I was doing everything. Though I will admit I didn't really have anything to do that day that I finished the book, but I don't care, it was just that good. Now we're going to get into essentially what the book is about and then my impressions, perspectives of the book. So, when we start off this book, we meet a character named Scarlett and her sister Donatella. Tella for short. They live on this little island out in the middle of the sea, and their dad is like the governor of the island. So he's in power, and he has a lot of power, I might add. We find out early on that their dad's not exactly the best father. He does actually physically abuse Scarlett and Donatella. Kind of one of the things where one of them messes up, he'll punish the other one to show like, oh, you don't mess up. And also at the beginning of this book, we have found out that Scarlett is in an arranged marriage with some high-ranking nobleman from, I'm assuming, a mainland or a bigger island in the world that they live on. Another big part of the story, especially for the name Caraval, is every year since Scarlett's mother was gone, she wrote to Caraval to ask them to come on her sister's birthday, because that's the only way that Caraval will come to your area, is if you write to them and you invite them. They never came, they never did anything. So, finally, she writes one final letter that tells them, don't bother coming, I'm getting married, and then that's when she gets the tickets to actually go to Caraval. Problem is, Scarlett knows her dad is not going to let her go, or her sister, especially with the wedding in, 10 days from when the book starts. So, somehow, with the help of this sailor named Julian, he's an interesting character that we follow throughout the book too. So with the help of Julian, Tella is able to actually get Scarlett off the island. So, within the first, I would say even 3 chapters, our characters are already on the way to Caraval. And Tella and Scarlett get separated, so it's Tella, and then there's Scarlett and Julian. And so Tella's already gone to the island. Scarlett and Julian are coming after on a boat, which it then sinks, and they end up there. And all Scarlett is really preoccupied with from the beginning of when she and her sister separated is finding Tella. That is all she actually cares about, is just finding Tella. And there is a way to find Tella. And the whole idea behind Caraval, it's not just a circus like we would think it would be. It's full of performers and everything, but every year with Caraval, it's a game. And people come from the world over to participate in the game. Somehow this year, Tella is part of the game. It kind of gets into that later too. Throughout the story, pretty much like 70% of the story, it is Scarlett, mainly Scarlett, and Julian trying to find Tella through these clues that the Caraval Master is actually leaving behind. So, the Caraval Master Legend has concocted this whole thing about how Scarlett is going to find Tella. But again, she's part of the game this year. So everybody on the island is looking for Tella because they want to find her to win this year's prize, which is a wish. You get granted one wish by legend if you find Tella. By the end of the book, a lot of stuff is finally revealed. We actually learn who Catherine's betrothed is, and then what happens with that, and then what happens with her dad, and then what happens with Scarlett and Julian, and then there's Tella, and she's kind of left off. This book, the thing for me is it's full of magic, but it was interesting to me because the main character didn't have any magic. She was subjected to the magic of Legends Caraval. It was very fun. It was very riveting. There were some adult themes in here, even though this is kind of registered, I guess, in the older YA section of most bookstores. But, like, there's nothing too gruesome, there's nothing too bad, but again, it's a little bit more on the adult side of how everything is. Stephanie Garber's writing is fantastic. I do want to read more of her stuff when I get a chance. I did find out recently there's actually a follow-up to this called Legendary, and I think that one actually follows Tella, because like I said at the end of the book, Tella's kind of left hanging, and there's still a ton of things that we don't know about, like, well, what exactly happened to their mom after all this, what happened to their father, you know, what's going to happen to Scarlett and Julian, and then what happens to Tella. If you have a chance to read this book, I totally recommend reading this book. It is amazing. It is fantastic. It's actually a pretty quick read. It's not that thick at all. But I think one of the other interesting things is there was a lot of Spanish themed. I think it might have been actual Spanish. But I totally love the book. Again, it was a 4.5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I recommend this to anybody. I know our Blue Dragon is actually going to read this at some point, so keep an eye out for that review. That is the review for Caraval. The next review is going to be Heartless by Marissa Myers. And that book, holy, no cursing, holy heck, that was a good one. So I will see you guys in the next review, and keep burning through those books like the dragons you are. Bye, y'all.